So the full set list for Heatwave Arena, Hot Air Arena, there seems to be multiple different names for this set, has been revealed. This is going to be part of our Destined Rivals set, which I believe is coming in May. I don't think that's right. But apparently it is May 30th is when Destined Rivals is planned to be released over in the West. And Hot Air Arena is going to be half of it because we also have Glory of Team Rocket, which is going to be the second half. But that set hasn't been officially announced yet, as there has been no cards revealed for it yet, but we know it's coming. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the noteworthy cards that will be releasing in this set. I'm going to split the video into two halves. There's going to be the main set, and then there's also going to be the Trainers Pokemon, which I will put towards the end. I will probably have a timestamp on the screen if you want to skip to the Trainers Pokemon. But if you care about the full set, then we'll begin from the top. Starting with Yarn Mega EX. This is a 280 HP Grass type Pokemon with the Buzz Boost ability that says once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the bench to the active spot, you may search your deck for up to 3 basic grass energy and attach them to this Pokemon. And it has the Jet Cyclone attack, which for 3 grass and a colorless does 210 damage, and then you move 3 energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. So I see the main play with this card is to move it from the bench to the active, attach 3 energy to it, and then attach for turn, and then you can do 210 damage and move those 3 energies onto another Yarn Mega or maybe a different grass Pokemon or Pokemon that can use grass energy. Teal Mask Ogerpon is a good example because it does more damage based on the amount of energy that's on it. There's also Hydrapple EX with its Slurp Storm attack that does 30 damage plus 30 more damage for each grass energy attached to all of your Pokemon. And its ability also allows you to attach a grass energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon and heal 30 damage, very similar to Teal Mask Ogerpon, but Teal Mask Ogerpon attaches to itself. This card is pretty decent because it can very quickly power itself up by just moving into the active spot, and it only has a retreat cost of 1, but then again you're having to move your current active, which could have a higher retreat cost, but there are cards that can alleviate that type of stuff. It could be another Yarn Mega or a Yanma that you move, and now you can attach 3 onto that one, and then you could possibly use something like a switch, so then you can move another one in, and then that one's ability triggers, and you can quickly accelerate a lot of energy into play. Interesting card, but we'll have to see if it sees play and what decks and what cards it could see play alongside, because it is a very powerful way of accelerating a lot of grass energy from the deck. Next up is Crustle, which is a 150 HP grass Pokemon with the Mysterious Stone House ability that says prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. Very, very similar ability to that of Aegislash and also Mimikyu, so another sort of like stun Pokemon. But is its attack any good? For 1 grass and 2 colorless, it does 120 damage, and then this Pokemon's damage isn't affected by any effects of your opponent's active Pokemon. So say your opponent's Pokemon's attack applied a certain type of effect, like for example Archaladon says that it no longer has weakness, even though it's resistant to grass, so you'd actually be doing less damage. But say Hisui and Gudra V-Star was still in the format, which it currently isn't. That card says that it takes, I believe, 80 less damage. That effect wouldn't apply when you attack with Crustle. It's an okay card. The attack cost is a bit high, and it is a stage 1, so it's a bit easier to get into than something like Aegislash, but Mimikyu is a little bit better because its attack costs less energy. It's also on a basic, and it also has a lower retreat cost. So like the card is decent, but we just have better options. Next up is Hydrapple. It has the Hydra Breath that says discard 6 basic energy cards from your hand in order to knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. If you can't, then this attack doesn't do anything. A very gimmicky card, but like gimmicky decks and gimmicky cards do end up seeing play. It is a stage 2, and of course we also have the Hydrapple EX, which can help power it up, and we have a bunch of ways to search energy out and a bunch of ways to get energy back from the discard, so who knows, it could see play as a very gimmicky type of deck, but it was worth mentioning. Next up, Rapidash, 110 HP fire Pokemon with the Hurried Gate ability that says once during your turn you may draw a card. We just have like a couple of better draw options for most decks. Like most current meta decks have an inbuilt draw engine or an inbuilt way to search cards or like gain some form of advantage. Dragapult has Dracloak. We of course have Teal Mask Ogerpon. There's stuff like Squawkabilly still in the format. There's Antipathy EX. There's just better cards that can do it a lot more efficiently. And only been able to draw one card. Also on a stage 1 that has a pretty bad attack, 60 damage for a fire and a colorless. So you not only need to evolve into it to be able to draw a card, keep in mind it isn't once per turn, so if you have multiple you can, draw for each one of them, but there's just better options, let's be honest. Next up, Dondozo EX, 260 HP, a water Pokemon, basic by the way, big basics. For a water and a colorless, it's Tsunami Reversal, does 30 damage, and then it does 10 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So with a max HP of 260, that's 25 damage counters for a grand total max damage of 280, which is okay, but for a water and a colorless, it's kind of a bit of a steep cost. But its second attack could help in powering up the first attack a lot more efficiently. For 2 water and 2 colorless, it does 120 damage, but you can also make it do 120 more damage, and if you do, this Pokemon does 50 damage to itself. So you can do 240 damage for 2 water and 2 colorless, and then it does 50 damage to itself, which could power up the first attack, but in most instances it's going to put it in range of a very easy KO. But if you're in the early game, you can build up a little bit of damage maybe, but I think this card just isn't that good, but it's worth mentioning. Its attack cost is way too steep. It does have a 4 energy retreat cost, so you could use something like Heavy Baton for when it is knocked out to move some of that energy somewhere else. But it's interesting, it's there, but it's genuinely not really that good. Speaking of stuff that isn't that good, Electivire EX, 280 HP lightning type Pokemon with the dual bolt attack. For 1 lightning and 1 colorless, this attack does 50 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Pretty decent, 50 damage could knock out some low HP basic Pokemon, but most of the time they have about 60, 70 HP, so it's okay. It could help you snipe something on the bench for a knockout if you've already done some damage to it. And it attacks 2 benched Pokemon, which is also pretty decent. And then the second attack for 2 lightning and a colorless, high voltage press, does 180 damage, and if this Pokemon has at least 2 extra energy, so it needs 5 energy, it does 100 more damage. Now, we do have ways of quickly accelerating lightning energy into play with stuff like electric generator. Also, it's 2 extra energy. It doesn't have to be lightning energy. You just need 2 lightning and then basically 3 colorless, so you could use other energies. But 5 energy for 280 damage. There's Pokemon that can do 280 damage for less energy. So yeah, that's not very good. The first attack is decent though. It's too steep of a cost for the amount of damage that it does. It does do a lot of damage, but Dondozo can do 280. It just needs to have taken 250 damage. Next up, Rotom. It's Astonish attack for 1 lightning, does 20 damage, and then you choose a random card from your opponent's hand and shuffle it into the deck. A decent bit of control for, the non-existent control decks. And then its second attack for 2 colorless and does 30 damage for each Pokemon tool attached to all of your Pokemon. So only your own Pokemon. But I guess stun and stall decks tend to use stuff like Bravery Charm. It heavily depends on what you play. But it's decent. It's a little bit of a stun card that could see play if we end up getting control decks in the future. Next up, Zeraora, 100 HP lightning type Pokemon. Its attack Thunder Blitz for 3 lightning, says discard all energy from this Pokemon, and then its attack does 210 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon EX. It was good until I read the last word. But 210 damage to an EX is okay. There are some Pokemon that are around that HP, if not a little bit lower or a little bit higher, so you could put them in range of potentially another knockout. Say you hit something in the active and then put some damage on the bench, that type of thing. But if it did damage to any bench Pokemon, I think it just would have been better. And then we move on to the 1 item card worth talking about, Sacred Ash. Shuffle up to 5 Pokemon from your discard pile into the deck. It's basically Energy Recycler but for Pokemon, and fun fact, Energy Recycler is going to be getting a reprint in this set. So we're basically going to have Energy Recycler for Pokemon and Energy Recycler for energy, and we also have Super Rod in the format and all that kind of stuff. So more ways to recycle back your Pokemon. And that's it. Yep, that's all the decent stuff from the set. There isn't a lot. It's another very, very mid set. If not, I'd say worse than Journey Together, But it's only the first half of Destined Rivals. We also still have the Glory of Team Rocket, which could be better. And now we get to talk about the Trainers Pokemon, which, could fix the set, or they could not. We'll have to see. So we'll start off with Ethan, with Ethan's Quilava and Ethan's Typhlosion. Ethan's Quilava has the Adventure Bond ability. It says that once during your turn you may search your deck for an Ethan's Adventure and reveal it and put it into your hand. Ethan's Adventure is a support card that says you can search your deck for up to 3 combination of Ethan's Pokemon and basic Fire Energy, reveal them and put them into your hand, which is pretty decent and sets up Ethan to be a fire-based deck, even though we will see soon enough that his deck isn't entirely made up of fire Pokemon. And then we have Ethan's Typhlosion with the Body Blast attack for 1 fire, does 40 damage plus 60 more damage for each Ethan's Adventure card in your discard pile. So if you've used all 4, that's an increase of 240 damage plus the 40 for 280. Granted, you do need to use all 4 of them, or you could just discard them to build up your damage, but 280 for 1 energy is pretty good, and granted, it's on an evolution line that has a decent mid-stage evolution. Next up we have Ethan's Magcargo, which has the Melt and Flow ability that says that if this Pokemon has no energy attached, it has no retreat cost. Then it has the Lava Burst attack for 3 fire energy, and it says discard up to 5 fire energy from this Pokemon, and this attack does 70 damage for each energy you discarded in this way. So 70 times 5 is 350 damage, which is more than enough to KO any Pokemon in the format, until the Mega Pokemon arrive. Now you may be thinking, 5 energy to get onto this Pokemon is like kinda steep, considering fire doesn't have a lot of ways to accelerate energy into play, but its ability is pretty good because once you've used those energies you can retreat into something else. But the main way you're going to be powering up this card is with Ethan's Ho-Oh EX with the Golden Flame ability. That says once during your turn you may attach 2 basic fire energy from your hand to one of your benched Ethan's Pokemon. And the ability is only a soft once per turn per card, so if you have multiple you can attach even more energy. Very, very powerful card. The only restriction being it has to attach to benched Ethan's Pokemon, so you can't just run Ho-Oh in any fire deck, it has to be in Ethan's deck. And then it also has the Shining Feather attack for 4 fire energy, it does 160 damage and then you heal 50 damage from each of your Pokemon. So you can do a decent amount of damage and heal up any damage that you may have taken. Pretty powerful card. Do keep in mind it only attaches to benched Pokemon, it can't attach to the active. But I guess the main play is to attack with Magcargo, retreat Magcargo into something else, and then use Ho-Oh EX to power up that Magcargo again, and then bring it back in and attack again. Ethan does have some other pieces of support. Ethan's Pichu is a 30 HP baby Pokemon with 3 retreat and an attack that costs 0 energy that does 30 damage and then you draw a card. It's decent, it's free retreat and it's 0 attack and it draws a card, but Badoo is just better. You may as well just play Badoo over Pichu. And then he also has Sudowoodo, which for starters requires fighting energy in a fire based deck. It says during your opponent's next turn the defending Pokemon can't retreat and it does 20 damage. It's okay. Preventing Pokemon from retreating is pretty strong, especially in a format where people don't respect those types of cards and they don't play stuff like Switch or Turo or all that kind of stuff. And it also has the Accept Mimicry attack for 2 colors. You flip a coin, if heads, choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. Not worth playing, you're mainly probably going to use it for the first attack, but it does mean you have to play fighting energy inside of a fire-based deck. Next we'll move on to Misty. So we have Misty Psyduck with the Slapstick Jump, which says that once during your turn if this Pokemon is on the bench, you may discard the bottom card of your deck, and if you do, discard all cards attached to this Pokemon and put it on top of the deck. This leads into some of her Pokemon later on, but we'll get to that one in a minute. Next up, Misty Staryu has the Sudden Flash attack. For 1 water, it does 60 damage, but if this Pokemon evolved from Misty Staryu during this turn, it does 80 more damage. 1 water for 140 damage on the turn it evolved is pretty decent, I guess. But the main card you're going to be attacking with is Misty's Gyarados with Misty's Magikarp. I want to mention Misty's Magikarp because it has the incredible dive ability. So as long as this Pokemon is on the bench, prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. So it can't be hit by bench sniping attacks, and it also cannot be hit from damage counter placing attacks like Dragapult. So it pretty much protects itself while on the bench. And then we have Misty's Gyarados with Splashing Panic for 1 water, discard the top 7 cards of your deck, and this attack does 70 damage for the amount of Misty's Pokemon you find there. So I guess the main play is to use multiple Psyducks to put them on top of the deck, and then use Gyarados to discard all of those cards, but then again you're discarding 7 cards from the top of your deck, which is a lot, considering the max deck size is only 60, and you're going to be going through your deck a lot each turn, and it's going to get thinner and thinner and thinner. You might end up milling yourself out. Plus, if you're not able to get those Misty Psyducks into play, it's a bit of a gamble in terms of an attack. But it is very strong if you are able to hit like at least 4 Pokemon, but that dependent on if you hit 4 Pokemon, because you could hit energy, items, supporters, and now they're in the discard. Maybe you needed those cards for next turn. I feel like this could have been done a bit better, but it's whatever really. And then with Misty's Lapras, which for 1 water, swim together lets you search your deck for 3 Misty's Pokemon and put them into your hand. It's a search card and it's like okay-ish. So Misty seems to be probably the weakest out of them all, is what I would be saying. But now we have Arven. Arven's whole gimmick is about healing, because his Pokemon hate taking damage, as we will see with Arven's Mabosstiff EX. It's Hustle Tackle for 1 Colress, does 30 damage, and if this Pokemon has no damage counters, it does 120 more damage, so 150 if it's at full health, which is like decent-ish. And then 3 Colress Boss's Headbutt does 210 damage, but it can't use it again next turn. Arven also has 2 other Pokemon, being Toedscruel, which has the Pull, which allows you to switch your opponent's benched Pokemon, which is a bit strange. And then it also has the Reckless Charge, which does 120 damage, and this does 30 damage to itself. Not worth playing. But then we have Greedent, with its Greedy Order. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may put up to 2 Arven's Sandwich from your discard pile into the hand. So what is Arven's Sandwich? Well, it's an item card that heals 30 damage from the active Pokemon, but if it's an Arven's Pokemon, you heal 100 instead. Yeah, the Arven's Pokemon, I'm going to be honest, just are terrible. It's not good at all, because most of the time when you take damage, you're going to be taking quite a lot. So you're going to have to use multiple Arven Sandwiches, and then you're going to have to evolve into Greedent to get them back, just so you're not only hitting 30 damage, because the fact that it's like, if this Pokemon doesn't have any damage counters on it, you do more damage. Seems a little bit restrictive. Maybe if it was like a certain amount of damage counters, it could be better, but it's the fact that if it has no damage counters, you do a lot more damage. So you basically have to heal up your own Pokemon with an item card that only heals 100 in a format where hitting 200 plus is like a staple. So yeah, I think Arven is probably the worst trainer out of this set. But the one trainer that I think is probably the best is Cynthia. So I'm going to start off with Cynthia's main Pokemon, that being Garchomp. But we're actually going to talk about the pre-evolution first, Gabite, because pre-evolutions with good abilities is always going to be an advantage, and Gabite has a very strong ability that is pretty much a copy and paste of the Gabite from the first set that introduced Dragon Pokemon. I forget what it's called, Dragon's Exalted, that's it. It has the Champion's Call. It says that once during your turn you may search your deck for a Cynthia's Pokemon, reveal it and put it into your hand. So this is already very, very strong, because say you have multiple Gibbles on the bench. You evolve one of them into Gabite, you can use that Gabite to search a Gabite. You can then use that Gabite to search another Gabite, and then you can use that Gabite to search another Gabite, and then you can use that Gabite to search for another Cynthia's Pokemon. So just from one Gabite, you can get all your Gabites and then an extra Pokemon. Yeah, that seems pretty good. And then we have Cynthia's Garchomp EX. Has the Corkscrew Drive, which does 100 damage, and then you draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. 1 energy for 100 is decent, and then you get to draw until you have 6 for next turn. That is pretty good. Then it has the Dragon Blaster for 2 fighting energy. It does 260 damage, but you have to discard all energy from this Pokemon. Bit unfortunate, because I'm pretty sure fighting doesn't have any form of energy recycling. There is stuff like Garganacl, but that's on a stage 2, and you're already playing a stage 2, as well as other evolutions, as we'll get to in a moment. But Garchomp is pretty decent, but it just needs that little bit of extra support. It also has free retreat on a stage 2, which is very, very powerful. So one of the pieces of support is Roserade. It has the Glory Cheer that says your Cynthia's Pokemon do 30 more damage to the opponent's active Pokemon, which sounds very similar to Hop Snorlax that we just received. However, the main difference between Cynthia's Roserade and Hop Snorlax is that Cynthia's Roserade stacks. So if you have multiple, the damage increase will stack. If you have 2 Cynthia's Roserade in play, your Garchomp will be doing 60 more damage, for a grand total 320. which is pretty big. And even then you probably don't need that because there's quite a few Pokemon in the format that are weak to fighting Pokemon already. Cynthia also has another piece of support, that being Spiritomb. This card is very, very strong. For one colourless, it has the Raging Curse. This attack does 10 damage for each damage counter on your benched Cynthia's Pokemon. So if you have a couple of Garchomps, maybe some stuff like Roserade that have been pinged down for some damage, you could bring in Spiritomb and do a lot of damage, heavily dependent on the amount of damage counters you've taken, but that can easily build up over time, especially if you're pivoting between Garchomps because it has free retreat. Plus, Cynthia also has a tool card, Cynthia's Power Weight, that says Cynthia's Pokemon this card is attached to gets an additional 70 HP. So your Garchomp now becomes 400 HP on a stage 2. It actually happened. Well, we needed a tool card to make it happen, but it actually happened. You could attach it to Roserade to give it 200, you could attach it to Spiritomb to give it a little bit of HP to survive an attack maybe, all that kind of stuff. Cynthia also does have Milotic. For one water and a colourless, it does 60 damage and then 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. It's decent, but your main goal for this deck is probably going to be Garchomp, so splashing in a water energy does let you use stuff like Crispin, but it's only going to be used on the Milotic because Garchomp purely requires fighting energy. I think Cynthia is the strongest out of all the trainers in this set, maybe alongside Ethan, but I think Cynthia needs just a little bit more support, especially considering you have to discard the energy, so if you have another way to get energy back, then the deck could be a lot better. And that is it for Hot Wave Heat Wave Arena. Not gonna lie, this set is just nothing, really. Like, the trainers Pokemon, the only two good ones are Ethan and Cynthia. Misty just is like whatever, and Arven's just bad. I guess the main draw for this set is probably going to be the illustration rares and secret art rares, which are already looking pretty decent. I like the Cynthia secret art rare and the Ho-Oh one, although a lot of people don't like it, but then again, people just can't seem to agree on a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think in terms of this set's impact on the game, it's going to be pretty minuscule. Maybe later on, if we get some more support again, Cynthia's Garchomp has the potential to be pretty good, but it just needs more support. Because, you know, discarding the energy without an inbuilt way of getting that energy back aside from attaching is just a bit of a downside. Overall, this set is nothing special. It's probably not going to impact the meta at all, but again, could be completely wrong. We'll just have to wait and see when it releases over in Japan, but in my opinion, this set isn't really that good. And that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about this set, what you think about these cards, what trainers Pokemon are you maybe wanting to pick up for your collection, because there are some pretty good illustration rares and secret art rares. I might pick up the Cynthia's cards. I want to wait to see how the deck does in Japan and if we get more fighting type support later on, which we already have confirmed with Mega Lucario, which again I feel could be a good partner for Cynthia's Garchomp, but we'll have to wait and see. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, all of the nonsense, and I will see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Take care.